Good afternoon. My name is Bahman Yazdanfar, and this is Voters Echo, a weekly program to bring different ideas, different opinions, different perspectives from different candidates, different members of the parliament or member of the provincial parliament, or even member of the municipal city or government, as well as ideas of the individuals who are going to vote for one of these candidates for you, for better understanding where they stand, what they do, and so on. A couple of disclaimers. I am not under payroll of anybody, any entity, any union, any political party. I do not endorse any candidates in my program or their affiliated parties. It is for you to decide whether or not you like their point of view and so on. The time for this program has been donated by Dr. James Sears, which I heard that he just registered as an independent candidate in the riding of the Beaches and East York. First, thank you for his donation, as well as my congratulations, and hope you succeed in your campaign. If you are interested to help me, either in the form of human resources or monetary, there is a button in my website called in www.votersecho.com that you can click on it and drop me a line or two. I will be more than happy to have a dialogue. I have not made a penny from this show, and I am not making anything out of that, so it is purely self-interest and maybe just for my self-indulgence. Now, without further ado, let me go to our guest today. And please introduce yourself, first and last name, and a little bit about yourself and background so people know who they are listening to.
Okay, my name is Raney. I was born at Toronto General, and I grew up in North York and Thornhill, and currently live north of King City. I ended up marrying a man who lived in King City area, so I moved there. My mother's parents came from another country. We were just discussing that earlier. My father's family's been here a while, so I have in my life those two influences of nation builder and new nation builder. I guess we're all really nation builders and new people. But I suppose if I had to give you my resume, I would say that I am a professional engineer, and that is a factor in why I'm running for the Green Party of Canada in King Vaughan.
And why the engineering and Green Party? What is the connection?
Well, it's pretty clear. Personally, I was attracted to the Green Party for its economic policies, which does seem to surprise some people. I don't think it should if they read the policies. But as an engineer, we're obligated. You're licensed to practice medicine and law and engineering and other things, and you're obliged to protect property and people, and in no particular order, these three things: property, people, and environment. And the engineers in Canada and their bodies, in Ontario, the Professional Engineers Ontario, and in Canada, Engineers Canada, are busy trying very hard to protect people, property, and environment all the time. And they accepted a long time ago that we need to anticipate the changes that will come with climate change, including things like infrastructure deficit that we have across Canada. Engineers Canada have traveled coast to coast several times across Canada on a voluntary basis to assess how our infrastructure will hold up, what state it's in, with an eye to climate change. And
let me get a little bit serious about this climate change, because this is becoming to me. I'm not a scientist. I cannot really vouch for the accuracy of any claim in either side of the table. But apparently it is a kind of the bandwagon that every political party gets into it, and especially at the time of election. NDP talks about environment. Liberals talk about environment. Conservatives, not much, unless they're forced to do that. Although I don't consider them the conservative. Again, many times I mentioned that in my program, they are not conservative of the Johnny MacDonald or Red Tories or anything. And then Green Party, of course, which is the base of the party, is environment. Then we have a smaller party like Animal Alliance, Environmental Party, and so on. I had an MP here just last week, John McKay, and he has been MP for 18 years, and he was very clearly explained the differences between the four parties, how they stand. But my question was not really totally answered in my satisfaction. I am a little bit stubborn in that field. Why putting tax on people, and how this taxing cleans the environment?
Okay. Well, you said a few things. I'd love for you to summarize what Mr. McKay said.
Well, it is on tape.
I'll have to look on tape.
But it is your timing today.
Yes, and this idea that it's a bandwagon and that the environment is a separate issue is a problem. The environment is a central issue. It's ecology and economy. They share the root eco. Everything we have comes from the earth. I used to tell high school kids, look around you. Everything you see was either designed by an engineer or designed by nature.
That's great.
And what do engineers use to design their stuff? The stuff that was made by nature.
Nature, of course.
So it's really
brick and mortar is from the nature.
Even if you look beyond the fact that we need to breathe and eat and drink good water. So you've asked me why taxing people will improve the environment.
Before you answer that, just tell me how Green Party stands. What is the plan you have? Let's say if you get mandates from people and form government.
Let's say.
I
love it. Well, okay, let's go there.
Yeah, we are.
But we can influence government, right?
Of course, but we are
minority.
creature of the imagination. Why not? Let's say October 19th, something happened, because in politics everything and anything could happen.
Yes.
Especially in last 3-4 days, and all of a sudden there is epiphany among voters, and get up and go to the ballot polling station, and everybody vote green. Okay, just play with it, and you form government.
We're dreaming in Technicolor, right? Green.
Green, no, Green Party. But what is the mandate of the Green Party in regards to these tax credit or carbon credit all of that?
Let me explain. The Green Party, people are surprised to find that the Green Party in Canada shares its values, shares principles, founding principles with Green Parties around the world. And I like to let people know, because they usually don't know this, that Germany's a strong economy. You would agree?
Yes, of course.
Germany's strong economy is in part due to the fact that they adapted green fiscal policies about 15 or a little over 15 years ago. So it's not just about the environment so much. It is that, as I said, the environment is everything, and it's about being clever. And what we need to do to survive our future, because the future is going to be uncertain and have some shocks. We're going to have some changes in climate, and we want to thrive in that. We want our children and our children's children in Canada to do well. We want everyone in Canada to participate, and we want to be able to not just take care of our citizens, but be good citizens in the world. This is what Canada does. And so we have to have a strong economy to be able to do the things we want to do as Canadians. Well, what the Green Party does is looks at what we have, what we want, and how we can get there more efficiently. And so you're talking about the tax system. The tax system right now is a mess. And I don't know how many people realize that when the other parties, they go out and they give boutique tax breaks here and tax credits there, they complicate the tax system. And in the administration of that tax system is a horrendous waste of money. We should really just go back to the drawing board and say, do we all agree on these social net and these social services and this social net? If this is what we want to do, then how can we get there more efficiently and make our tax system a little more simple? How can we get to where we want to go in the future more efficiently? Now, we can talk about social net and how the Green Party wishes to influence any future governments on getting there efficiently. But regarding turning our economy into a thriving economy of the future, because as you know, Mr. Harper did agree that Canada should go fossil fuel by 2100. I believe Chancellor Merkel and the other G nations that were there were hoping to make it 2050. So if we're going to go off of fossil fuel, let's start now and get ahead of the game and start thriving in that future. And how do we do that? Well, it's pretty simple, and it sounds simple when I say it like this, but the Greens are very good. I mean, we've come out with a costed platform, the first party. And so we know the numbers and we know the details. But what we do is essentially tax what we don't want and reduce taxes on the things we want. And in doing that, of course, for businesses, you have to always project and give signals and be consistent. That's what businesses want. They don't want to have taxing up and down and things they can't rely on, including the dollar going up and down. So they need to have predictability. So when the Green Party would go and do these things or encourage these things, it would be done gradually and progressively. But right now, our large corporate tax, which is the only tax that we're talking about that I think you're meaning, as far as income tax, that is going to go up, would go up under the Greens. So it's currently 15%, the large corporation income tax, which is the lowest of the OECD countries, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, so developed world. It's much higher than the Americans. So the Green Party is believing that we could, in one go, being projected in an election, for instance, and put it to 19%, which is the same as it was in 2009. Okay. Now, the reason why those taxes were dropped down to this rock bottom 15% was because the thinking at the time was sort of archaic economic modeling that, okay, well, if we don't tax the businesses, then they'll take the extra money and stimulate economy with it by building more jobs and investing in research and development and innovation. And that didn't happen. And some countries already knew that wouldn't happen, but we tried our own experiment. And the money that was saved by those companies since 2009 is roughly $600 billion, the difference between what the tax rate was and what it, and then when they lowered it. And the $600 billion roughly is considered dead money. And I quote Mark Carney, former governor of the
Bank of Canada.
He was saying this was sloshing around in their pockets. They didn't. It failed. It did not help to stimulate the economy. And all it did was reduce government's income, as it were, their revenue income, and make it harder for government to maintain the services that Canadians wish and want and desire, which has put us in a crunch. And so some of those services may have been cut in order to balance things in the end.
So what's happened to the tax regarding the carbon? The part that the
tax and dividend you're talking about. This is a good plan.
Yeah. And how it works?
Okay. Well, we tax carbon at its source because of there's a lot of research that's been done that knows the industries and roughly how much carbon they're releasing, how much greenhouse gases. So it is a known quantity, and that will be taxed. And then and this is because that's why we're not raising it more than 19, because we're going to tax some of these carbon producers with a carbon tax.
The origin of the producers.
Yes, the carbon producers. Money goes into a separate coffer, goes into separate from the mainstream.
The black hole
revenue.
that always go?
No.
Okay.
This then turns into the dividend, this pile of money.
Okay.
And every Canadian over 18 and over gets a check at the end of the year.
So let me
or a tax break.
Let me just give an example to see if I understood well. Let's say there is Shell, there is Esso, and all of that, and then you tax them in addition to that corporate tax, additional tax on the carbon production of, let's say, if it is gasoline or if they are mining in Alberta or something like that.
Okay.
Am I correct? So that, let's say, increase, let's say, $5 billion a year or $10 billion a year, whatever.
I can't speak.
No. I'm just using that number arbitrarily. I'm not asking. I don't know the number. So this $10 billion goes to a specific vault.
It goes into a separate bank account.
No, I'm saying it goes a specific vault.
That's right.
And no one has to touch it.
No one is allowed to touch it.
And these 10 billion at the end of the year, I assume,
divided by the population of
then let's say we have 35 million people, and over 18 we have 25 million. It divided to 25 million, and we send. Well, how do we give the money?
Well, most of those people are paying taxes, so it would come as a simple tax credit at the end.
Okay,
So that's how we would, and then the others, the government would send a check.
Okay, so it is additional line, let's say in the income tax or
That's right.
T4, let's say, okay, based on your income or not income, based on dividend, you get
Yeah,
40
it's
bucks.
just handed over. It's
40 bucks.
No
whatever.
monkey business. It's
Okay,
the 40 bucks.
40
straight.
bucks.
That's right.
Now, the flaw that I see in the whole process,
Okay.
idea is fine. I don't have a problem
like
with
the
idea.
Okay.
Idea is always ideas. Ideas are fine.
You know,
Ideas-
this is well, I'll let you
and I'm
finish.
going to explain to you. There is 7 billion people on the planet or so. And if any one of them comes with one good idea in his or her lifetime, we have 7 billion ideas, but we have only 1,000 Fortune companies. The point is how we do with what we do and how we do with the idea. The problem I have with the problem to understand it is, you need additional administrative body to handle that. One. Second, based on the history of governments, not only in Canada, but most of the world, the moment the money is there are a few greedy people that they want to, under pretext of different need, like a EI that conservative pulled out the money out from, like WSIB that they pulled out from, like a gas tax that they said to spend for the roads, and so on. All of a sudden, that vault that's supposed to be safeguard, it disappears.
Okay. Well,
So how you?
this is exactly what the BC government. You may or may not realize that carbon tax and dividend was
actually
introduced in BC.
actually Mr. McKay mentioned that, and
Yes.
he was
It was brought in
praising.
2008, and it was done over a period of 3 years.
But it is
phased in.
a straight tax.
No, this is carbon tax and dividend. It's the same plan. Yeah. It's administered within the province of BC. And the BC economy has outperformed the rest of Canada since then. The people who were fighting and screaming about it are pretty happy to get their check. And don't forget that check is equal across Canadians. And so people who aren't doing so well, and young Canadians now and unemployed and struggling, that in relation to their earnings, that's quite a bit of money. That's a little bit of a help. So it's revenue neutral
Yeah.
to Canadians as a whole, but to people who need it most, it's a bigger lift.
And how?
The administration is not so complicated.
But this plan is supposed to be national. That's correct.
The Green Party would like to see that done nationally, because right
Okay.
now we have every province scrambling for lack of leadership.
Well,
Right,
that
we
is
have
another
cap
problem.
and trade between BC, Ontario, and Quebec, and cap and trade when you talk about administration. Now that's a nightmare.
Yeah, I understand that.
Right,
What I'm saying
the
is,
chief economists of the CIBC, chief economists of what was the other bank? Well, I think they probably all have said at some point, the most
TD.
elegant,
TD usually.
the most elegant plan is pricing the carbon, and a carbon tax, a dividend is an excellent idea. So they are speaking to the fact that it's elegant. And when I asked what they mean by elegant, I think it was Jeff Rubin at the time was speaking to, a former chief economist. Elegant means that it's not complicated and efficient.
Okay. You earlier, just before we started the show, you asked me what is my definition of politics. Now, you have we live in a country, 3 territories, 10 provinces, 1 federal government. Each one of them, they have their own power. And based on my...
And don't forget the municipalities, the
Oh,
first...
no, I'm talking about the...
First Nations, Métis, and Inuit.
Yes, but when it comes to issues like policy, like environment, these are the main bodies that really have to first resolve the issue among themselves, and then they transfer it to their municipalities. But based on my experience in the last few years, I realized that the power of provinces in some cases is much more than power of the federal government. Now, as a federal body, how do you want to they cannot even resolve the issue of the Senate among themselves without opening the Constitution. How do you want to get into the negotiation of the 13 different governments with from different parties to convince them that, hey, this is the way to go?
As you know, though, the provinces have been asking for leadership on this issue and other issues like healthcare. Provinces have been asking to sit down with the feds. And just because there's been a slow decline in the number of meetings between not just the Harper Conservatives, but even before, the meeting of federal government with provinces and this collaboration, just because that hasn't been happening doesn't mean it ought not to happen. And we really feel that it needs to, because we need to streamline. We need to help, and all Canadians, by the Constitution, the federal government is responsible for many things like healthcare, in the sense that they have to make sure Canadians, wherever you live, get the same healthcare or equal access. And so these kind of things are somewhat related. There is a division of powers between province and federal, but they are also there is a role for the leadership of the federal government. And to say that it would be difficult, I would disagree. There's, unfortunately, because of the gap in leadership, the void, the provinces have stepped up with cap and trade and other things. I know that the Liberal plan, for a while, I heard Mr. Trudeau say, well, we think this is good. We think that different regions have come up with their own ideas and we would knit it together like a big quilty patchwork. But that's complicated for businesses that work across borders as well. And cap and trade is more administratively cumbersome. So Elizabeth May and the Green Party has created be prepared for this. It's called the Council of, now I have to remember now, Governments.
Okay.
The Council of Governments Committee. So what she's talking about is most of the things we want to do, we're not budgeting and planning and costed for these things to happen immediately. These are intentions in the future. But to get all the levels of government together, so not just the provinces and the territories, but also the municipalities, and as I said, the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations, and have a talk. And Elizabeth May and many other people who go with all their good intentions to Parliament, and senior civil servants, are very good at working together on issues. Really, it's something that I think is quite overdue to happen. So that in that Council of Canadian Governments, we would be discussing many things like national strategies. We're the only now I think it's G20 or G20 that doesn't have a national energy plan. We don't have a national housing plan. We're the only country.
We scrapped it about 30 years ago.
We're the only country that has national health care but doesn't have pharmacare.
No, we don't, and even our national health care is a two-tier system.
And we need to get rid of. We need to fix that. The Green Party believes in one-tier system. So there's a lot of leadership that we have to compensate for. There's been a lack in the past. It's been a little bit too much partisan politics and divisive politics.
And how optimistic you and the rest of you Green Party members are regarding all of these utopian kind of the environment that you're describing right now.
Well, don't forget you started saying that we were going to win government.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is, you see,
we would advocate.
One of the questions I ask from my guests who are MPs or MPPs, and I asked them, really, do people need you guys? And I just very briefly explain why, and then I go back to the issue of the optimism. Because, especially when it comes to federal government, MP, they are knocking on doors, throwing the flyers. Everybody talks about the environment. All these papers, corporate signs all over the place, and everybody is, hey, I am for environment. And then as soon as they get the vote, you don't see them for 4 years.
I would say that's true. And in an article in the Toronto Sun, they said, I'm sorry, I don't remember the columnist's name, but he was saying that the other three parties, there are 4 national parties. The other 3 just give the environment lip service.
There is 19 national parties. Well, they don't talk about the other 15.
Coast to coast to coast and
coast to coast to coast to coast.
We
have 19 registered party. They don't get the chance to have.
Okay. I guess I'm looking at, since 2004, the Green Party considers this a landmark. That we've had
of course. You are one
riding.
of the 4, yes, of course.
So the other 3 parties give it lip service, this environment and climate change action. and that if climate change, he actually concluded by saying, if climate change action is important to you, if climate change is important to you, then you should vote for the Green Party because they have a very good plan and they know what they're doing. And we really do. You know, when the government's elected in October 19, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm sorry I said that. I would like to say when the Parliament is elected in October 19. And we have the Paris meeting, everyone knows about, the climate change. And we've been fumbling this ball since Kyoto, since Canada promised and then came out of it. That's in December, but the rough draft of what Canada proposes is due in November, just weeks after the election. Now, I would like to see if any of those other parties are as prepared as we are. And the Green Party, now I'm not one of the people writing this policy, but that was the first plank that they put their efforts into, hoping it would get stolen. You know, or there's no such thing as stolen, but the Green Party doesn't care.
Someone adopted at least.
That's right. They need all the help they can get. So Elizabeth May knows what she's talking about, and we have a lot of really smart people who know what they're talking about in the Green Party, and they do in all parties, but particularly.
Oh yeah, I had Mr. Tolley here. He was very bright.
Yeah, but I'm thinking on this issue, they've been looking at this for a long time, you know. And the Green Party in Germany, the first MP was elected in 1982, and they were already knowing in the 80s, and Mr. Mulroney's government in the 80s was already setting in place actions to deal with climate change. There were no deniers in the beginning. Science actually had an input in policy in those days, and governments didn't question the scientists, and they went and set about to lay out policies.
The issue of the
I'm not sure I answered your question.
No, I understand. I got that. You know, you answered it. But the issue of the writer from Toronto Star or reporter or columnist who wrote about that, and the three other party are
lip service.
They providing lip service or speak from both sides of their mouth when it comes to the which I agree with that. But I go one step beyond that. I don't think they are doing that just to convince voters. I think they are doing that because it has a benefit and profit for those parties. Giving lip service to environment. Money. I give you an example. Just in Ontario, the Liberal government of Ontario have or has one of the worst I cannot say one of the worst precedent in the Canadian history to accumulate the debt of the province within short years. In fact, in the last 10 or 11 years, they accumulated more debt than the federal government, which is the whole country, in one province. And still they are looking at to dig in, to put their hand in the pocket of the consumers. Either it is the hydro, either it's the gasoline, and now with the carbon trade. And as you mentioned, it is one of the most costly among the four alternatives when it comes to the administrative.
Yes.
Now, my question is there any intention in Green Party platform to generate revenue out of this idea of the climate?
We want to generate revenue from having a healthy economy in diverse and sustainable. So we want to have, and we can talk more about how we're going to make sure that clean technologies and new ideas get to the market. We need clean technologies. For every $1 million invested in clean technology, you get 15 new jobs. For every $1 million invested in fossil fuel industry, you get 2 jobs. The technology in Canada, technology in general in Canada, is doing very well. It's just sitting there. We really do have a great opportunity. We have smart people, well-educated, talented Canadians. We're known for innovation. We have a modern economy, a modern country. We have resources, and I'm not saying we have to stop with the resources. We just want to put value on the resources. We're not against pipelines, for instance, and I digress a bit, but We're against shipping raw resources. We should
No, I
be
understand that.
upgrading it here.
The,
it's also
the
dangerous.
content is important. It's
Right.
not the pipe by
Right,
itself.
so we want to steer the economy to the economy of the future. Remember, the world is going off fossil fuels. We could be a leader in the technologies required to make it, one of the reasons we get off fossil fuel is to get more bang for our buck, make sure we're efficient with the energy we're using. We generate it and use up twice as much energy that we really need right now. So efficiency is a huge thing, and that includes the grids, the old grids that we've got.
That is why I brought the example of the government of Ontario.
Yeah.
They started with the same kind line of the convincing people regarding, hold on a second, maybe they copied or not. Then they went to the wind power. Then they made a contract with Samsung. So out of that new technology that they were talking about, very few people got the opportunity to engage in the job opportunities here.
Oh, I agree. I feel that, and there are some things that were done right, but I feel that when it comes to the Ontario provincial government's approach to especially wind turbines and renewables, there were some things they did that weren't right, and maybe some lessons could have been learned if they had looked at Norway. This is what the Green or Denmark. They made some of the same mistakes they made in Denmark. They put them too close to the homes. They didn't take into account the life cycle that the company should be responsible for, not just building it, but taking it down when it needs to be dismantled in the far future. So the life cycle of the entire engine, or the generating engine. But the Green Party's policies, for that reason, are based on best practices around the world. We come up with ideas that aren't just out of a vacuum. We look at what another country does. They have the same problem we had. What did Finland do? What did Germany do? We look at other countries and we see, would that work here? We tweak it. Then we check it out. We let it fly. We talk to the businesses. We talk to the economists. We talk to the academics. We talk to socialists. We talk to ex-government people, and we get their opinions. And then we tweak it some more.
So the only way that you guys or you ladies and gentlemen of Green Party can do some of these is to have at least about a dozen members in the parliament.
And it looks like we're on line to get there if you look at the numbers.
Mr. Tully had the number 16 or something.
Yes. Well, the problem is most people poll nationally, and it doesn't look good for us. But if you just look at the local polls, and because the Green Party has tried to concentrate its resources, we're not wealthy, we're not rich, we're a grassroots party, and in fact, we're probably trying to grow a little faster than we would like right now. We've put our leader up there, and so many people think the Green Party, that's just Elizabeth May, and it's not true. This is a really, really, really good well-founded company, party.
Yeah.
Well-founded party.
Yeah.
And we put Elizabeth May up there in a sense, or she put herself up there, because we feel the urgency with climate action, bold climate action now. And we've had in the past, and in this particular Conservative government, denial of climate change. And in fact, we're subsidizing about $1 billion a year the oil and gas industry, and there's nothing.
Who is subsidizing?
The Canadian.
Oh, Canadian Motor. When you say you were talking about party, I thought.
It's the most subsidized of any industry in Canada is the oil and gas. And the thing that really gets me is that I just went blank. But I was thinking so many things. But we are subsidizing that at $1 billion.
You were talking about Elizabeth May. Okay.
Yes. There is no commodity that has a larger profit margin on it than a barrel of oil.
Of course.
These companies are not hurting. They're making money elsewhere. It's a little expensive working on getting the bitumen out of our sands, so they don't have quite as big a profit margin. But there's also the Green Party wants to look at working with the provinces again, making sure that in all our natural resources, where we have non-renewable resources being mined by multinationals, that our royalties are what they should be. Peter Lougheed's policies have been pretty much adopted by the Green Party.
Yes.
And that's why we know to keep the money separate.
So Lougheed was a long time ago, and ever since then, a lot of things has changed.
But a lot of the refineries.
It's like NDP and CTF, and I had a guest, Mr. Novo of the of the Parkdale MPP here, and she mentioned about Mr. Mulcair. I said, Mr. Mulcair ain't no Tommy Douglas. I mean, you can go
No,
back.
it's not.
And
They're the
you-
most whipped party, you know.
No, but you can go by. You can always conservatives are relying on Johnny A. MacDonald, or liberals counting on the George Brown before Confederation and joining and working together to make this Confederation. But these days, that is why I brought the issue of the profit, because party politics has replaced the people's politics, in my view.
I agree with you.
And that causes a lot of profiteers become like a Republican side of the borders,
I think
just focusing on it. That is why I brought the issue.
No, I agree
in
with you. No, I
comparison.
would just like to say that, Bauman, that I agree with you. I feel that the biggest threat to our democracy, well, there's lots of threats, but
Which
we've
democracy
done
are
it-
we talking about?
I'm talking about all the parties since the PMO.
Which democracy are we talking about?
the Canadian democracy. You know, I knew there was some nibbling at the edges. I was aware
Yeah.
of that, but when I became more interested in getting into the details of it and doing more and more research, I'm quite shocked at how much of our democracy has been compromised, and it's done by partisan politics. And that's why I'm with the Green Party. It's the anti-party party. I have no interest in being any part of the other three parties. I know the NDP have never formed a government, but they're behaving the same. They're whipping their vote. If you are an NDP MP, you can't vote how you feel your constituents would want, or in the best interest of the constituents, if that's not what the leader wants.
No, it is a corporation.
They're if you look on the net, you'll see the numbers. I don't know those numbers, but I think they're whipped more than the other two parties even. And vote whipping, as far as I'm concerned, should not occur. The Constitution doesn't mention political parties. The Constitution does not mention the PMO, which Mr. Trudeau has mentioned his dad created, and this is true, and it's just been a slippery slope since then.
Of course. It's
And
1972.
I'm just tired of it.
1972, they pushed it in the Election Act, and 1974, Mr. Trudeau came into the power, elected. It was one of the first things.
They don't have this problem in Britain.
No, well,
They still have the Privy Council running the government there.
Non-partisan
civil servants.
Yes, but still, I'm not sure. But don't they have?
They may have problems.
The name of the party in the ballot.
They may have problems.
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
but their PMO problem isn't nearly what ours is.
Oh no, because the number of
So we want
reasons.
to cut the PMO budget
yeah.
by 50% right away. That's what the Greens would
Well,
like to see.
well, that's fine and dandy, but I don't think that is the only reason
No,
that
it's
we
not.
are in deficit.
No, and we could be here for more than an hour talking about what's wrong with the.
Yeah, let's get is a good segue, because you said democracy, and I said what democracy? I was a little bit sarcastic. Yes, I am actually. I don't believe we have a democracy. I am not under this belief since 1990, when I was attending to political studies at the University of Saskatchewan. But let me focus on your campaign now. After all of these things, is it the first time you're running?
After you put a hole in my balloon,
No,
then we don't have a democracy.
Our audience.
We have to have hope, Vaughan.
Yeah, hope. Of course,
We
that
have
is
to
why
have
we are
hope.
sitting here.
And-
If we didn't have it, we wouldn't be here.
Exactly. And as long as Canadians exist, I think we have a good reason
Of
for hope.
course, as long.
You're here now doing this,
Yes.
and I'm here to support and be a part of, and the more that the people can get to know me in the more different ways they can see
Now
me,
they know
that's
that
better.
you are a woman of substance, that you know your stuff. Now let me ask you: is it the first time you are running?
It is. I was an engineer up till
Why?
sometime
Why
in the summer.
now?
Well, I still am an engineer, but I stopped doing engineering. Why?
Why right now?
Yes.
Why not earlier? No, and why not?
It's funny though.
What is
It
your
requires
trigger?
a certain amount of life behind you, I think.
Of course, you
And
have
some
to
of us
have
it takes more than others to realize that Edmund Burke was right. Edmund Burke is the
Who is
Irish
the Edmund Burke?
Irish member of parliament in the UK government
okay,
a
I
couple
don't
hundred
know.
years ago, I
Okay.
think. And he said that, well, and I'm paraphrasing, but if, you know, I'm trying to remember how to say it, but the idea is that you got to stand up and do something. And then do
Bob
nothing.
Marley said that.
Yes, well, there's many people that said it since. But they who there's nothing. Oh, I can't believe my brain isn't working. There's nothing. What is the one about evil to prevail? Is for good. The only thing required for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. Now you've heard that. That's Edmund Burke.
Actually, Napoleon Bonaparte says. Napoleon Bonaparte said that the worst thing for people, the worst thing for a society that it happens by people who sit aside and do nothing. Yes.
And this is why I stepped up, because I knew that quote. I also knew his other quote, you live by these things. They rattle around in your head when you've studied. And I remember the other one was, the greatest tragedy is for someone to do nothing because they thought they could only do a little.
Of course.
And I feel that that was my clarion call and paradigm shift in my thinking. I had been an engineer, and as a female engineer, one tries to stay out of the politics of things, whether it's out of the office or anything. One just wants to be seen doing the job, and you want to be pleasant about it. But you in my time anyway, and hopefully this has changed for women in engineering, but I think that you're looked at a little more closely than your male counterparts might. So there was, engineers. I was hired by a lot of old white guys and conservative group. Yes. So but before that and outside of that, when I was in high school, when I was at university, I was involved. I was in student government. When I thought something needed to be done, I did it. I volunteered with seniors. I volunteered at camps. I was studying engineering, and I felt too much of one side of my brain getting overworked. I volunteered for the telephone distress line, and then was also executive on that for 2.5 years. So I've always felt an obligation to do more, because I was lucky to be born healthy and in Canada in a middle class family. So this is the way I was raised, and when I realized recently that I could retire early, get involved, and there's grandchildren involved and future, and I'm just tired of the messing around in the politics, and
okay.
That's why
now your calling came in this election, or how long you are with a member of the party?
I've been a member since last summer.
Oh, okay. So you're very new.
Very new.
Okay. Now, how? First of all, do you have an office, campaign office right now?
It's my home.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I know the budget of your party is not more than 13 or 14 million so far. So it's very difficult to allocate that to every candidate. So you don't have any. Do you have volunteers?
I have a few volunteers. One is outside, my husband.
Well, yes, outside of your sphere of your the circle of your family.
Yes, and more volunteers are stepping up.
Have you started to put your signs up or flyers?
Our signs are up.
Okay, and
I started knocking on doors in April to introduce myself as I became.
So you do campaign.
I do.
Because a lot of
it's the best I can.
No, I know, but a lot of candidates, they just rely on the flyers. So you do campaign. What do you get out of people when you campaign?
It's really interesting. Our riding is King Township, south of number 9, which is a rural riding.
And by the way, what is the border? It's
a number 9 highway, Bathurst on the east.
Yeah.
Caledon King Line on the west, which sort of slices off Bolton a bit.
You're beyond the Kill.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's fairly large.
Beyond the Dauphin, actually.
Yes, we're Bathurst to Bolton.
Okay.
To Caledon King Line, up to number 9.
Okay.
And then in the bottom is a little complicated. The east side of Highway 400 is Rutherford Road, and the west side is Major Mackenzie. And they bring it down in order to try to capture Maple.
Okay. So you are north of Major Mackenzie mainly, in part
Maple
of that.
and King Township,
okay,
that's what.
Okay.
Yeah. Now King Township's rural, and we have
so you have
towns
about what
and villages and hamlets.
75,000 eligible voters.
It was estimated 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, to be 119,000.
Voters or 99
electors. Over 100,000.
I doubt it. Okay. That's why I take your word for it.
Well,
because with the new redistribution, they try to keep it under 80,000 anyhow.
I know. But it's so spread out. It's rural.
And new subdivision keep adding over there.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was going to say that Maple, went on, as part of the city of Vaughan now, has been planting houses on farmland.
Yeah.
Houses that
I
Many
remember
people can't afford it.
I used to drive in through the meadow 20 some odd years ago,
Right.
and now everything is.
So I knock on those doors, the
Okay.
newer subdivisions,
Yeah.
mainly because they're closer together and I can
Yeah,
get. I
and
see
you
more people
you
in the
save
time.
time. You save time. Yeah.
And that surprised me because if you look at the polls, we used to be, most of it was either all Vaughan or Oak Ridge's Markham. And Oak Ridge's Markham elected Paul Calandra, Conservative. And Vaughan elected Mr. Fantino, Conservative. And if you looked at the polls, you would say there was no splitting of the left here. If you added up all the left, the Conservatives still would have won in 2011, which is why I started watching.
Who is your incumbent?
We don't have an incumbent. So
because of the
Oak
redistribution.
Ridge's Markham became
Yeah.
250,000 people.
Yeah.
And maybe perhaps you're right. It's not just electors. I'm assuming electors because it's on my my list.
Okay.
It might be just people, but I thought
Yeah.
it was electors. And so they had to split that off. That's just too many. So we have no incumbent and no candidates
So you are
who have any
you are in
experience.
better position.
Yeah.
How are the other candidates? Are they experienced or are they?
Not in this job. None of us are. And as
Oh, that's good. So the
Mayor Hazel McCallion said about the prime ministership, no one has experience for it until you're in it.
Well,
It's probably the same with MP. We do have the Liberal candidate, Deb Schult. The Conservative is Constantin Tubis and Natalie Rizzo for the NDP. And Deb Schult is a former town councillor. She has a little name recognition in the town of Vaughan. The town that developed
and baggage at
beyond
the same
its
time.
capacity of infrastructure. Pardon?
Those people who have been
their
in they have reputation, but they have baggage too. So it goes
Yeah.
both way.
And you may be aware, so you asked me what happens when I'm knocking on doors,
Yeah.
pretty much. And there is a lot of this feeling out there. I can't count numbers, but you do run into some people that say, no, I'm voting ABC.
Yeah, we all
Conservative, or I'm
normal.
concerned. I really like the Green Party. I like Elizabeth May. I like your policies. I usually vote Green, but I think this time I'm thinking I would vote Green, but maybe not this time because I want to worry about
Yeah, because it's the
voting
horse
against
race.
something.
They want to bet on the winning horse.
Yeah, but I get an awful lot of people who are new to Canada in those newer subdivisions as well. Many new Canadians, and they know about the Green Party. Oh yeah, Green Party. I'm voting for you. I lived in Germany for 2 years. Oh yeah, Green Party. I was in Israel. I know the Green Party. So the Green Party is very well respected in Europe.
Well, again,
And it's not here yet because cleaning products.
any party that gets that kind of the attention, like Green Party, they are respected until they get a large number of the members to the parliament, and then they see how they do it.
Yeah.
It has always
I
been
know
the
you think
case.
that, but I looked into that. I thought, well, they'll just be as bad someday when they get there. But it's hardwired differently. The leader of the party is not leading the party. The party is led by the federal council, the Green Party Federal Council. Did Mr. Tolley not explain
Well,
to
you have a steering commission kind of thing?
We have two people from every province and territory that are elected. And then they're elected by the members electronically. There is also convention meeting, but they're not necessarily elected at that time. So they overlap, and they represent where the Green Party goes. And if the leader were to get a little bit too big for their boots, the federal council would check that. That's their check on
It's
the
a
leader.
good way.
The other thing that's very different, if I may, because this party was designed in 1983. So in 1883, we were already seeing the negative influence, I believe, from the American politics across the border. We were already seeing the effects that partisan politics was having on our democracy, and the effects of corporate influence. So when they designed the Green Party, and I like to say it this way, they hardwired it to resist partisan politics and corporate influence. So you really have to look at the constitution of the Green Party or call up somebody.
As I mentioned earlier before the show, I registered. I'm a founder of the provincial small party, and my constitution they have a steering committee as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Elizabeth May was in the small party, which then became part of the Green Party.
And
federally.
And I always said I don't want a person with $10 membership of annual change the direction of the party, because you can get boss load of them, drop them into the convention, and change the leadership, and that is one of the reasons main political parties are in this array. What is your, we are getting about last 10 minutes of the program, or 8 minutes. What is your game plan between now and election day?
It's the same as it was before the election was called. I committed for 4 years or 5, elected or not, because the Green Party needs to be known. My job is to let people know about the platform, the policies, who we are, and took a while getting used to saying we, I have to say too. And I let that stand for itself. It's a grassroots party, and we have the young Greens, 14 and up, and we want to lower the voting age, of course, to one of our platforms. But we just have a tremendous amount of people who have joined and are working with the Green Party as members now. And when Greens do well in an election, it's because this group comes out, the young vote, the people that aren't voting generally. When they come out in numbers, it's usually because the Green Party candidate is getting that vote out. As I said before, it's the anti-party party. The young Greens have all sorts of great promotional stickers or slogans, and we're going to use some in my campaign. I've got a friend out there now painting it on a piece of wood. We're going to stick it up. It's going to say, "Keep the heat in the bedroom, not the planet."
Well,
and that was the young Greens that brought it in. These things, we need them. If they came up with a slogan, we need to use it.
Well, I had a gentleman by the name of David Berlin here last week. He's well-known. He's a well-known author and in the literacy in general. But he has formed a new political party called Bridge, and he was mentioning something like that he was doing as well.
It's really important.
The creativity of the young, involvement of the young.
Now the Generation Y, as I understand, there was a Couchiching conference I went to, and it was looking at this, and they're very, very involved in politics, but they're not involved with the old status quo groups. They're involved with it issue by issue. They're the ones that are out there in the Occupy movement. They're the ones that are out there social networking and demonstrating for climate change, action, and other things, and making sure the gap between rich and poor isn't so great. These kind of things, which we believe in.
During this last few minutes, I want to ask. Usually, at the election time, I ask my guests, "What is your prediction?" I am not holding you responsible of your wrong prediction, because everybody will be wrong, including I have been many, many times. What is the outcome of this election?
Well, it
not what are you
predicates
hoping.
The fact that I believe Elizabeth May will be re-elected, and I do believe that there will be a good number of Green MPs elected. Elizabeth May in the House this time will make all the difference. She wasn't an MP before, when there was a minority government, and this idea, I don't know where it's come from, but there's been a lot of misinformation that's been repeated by party leaders and parties because it's in their interests to have people forget what the duties of Parliament is, that the Prime Minister is to report to Parliament, not the other way around, that Parliament is in charge of what the Prime Minister does. Parliament is what runs the country, that all MPs are equal, that the Prime Minister is only the first among equals, and that, in fact, when you do elect someone, you really ought to try to elect in the affirmative and not the negative. The vote against, it makes you feel bad, and it doesn't necessarily work, and it's almost the first corruption of our democracy. I think that in this election, as long as Elizabeth May is in the House, and I think realistically there'll be some sort of minority, and I can't say which, she's got a number that she's always had, and she had it in 2011, to call the Governor General, and you might have heard her say this, but she's very sincere about it. We should not be skipping the step, that it should never be automatic in that Westminster parliamentary system, that the party with the most votes just crowns their party leader as Prime Minister. That doesn't have to happen. The other parties together might agree and lend their support or confidence behind someone else. The Governor General can then have a choice and decide who has the greater confidence in the House.
No, I have no doubt at her outspokenness.
So I have faith
general.
in that. I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
I'm sure that will happen.
Yeah.
So whatever the result of the election, not many people are predicting a majority. I think that's probably correct. And I
which
think
which minority, which party?
I don't. I don't. It's
You
so
don't.
early still, and
No,
I
you
am
don't.
concerned. I am concerned that the Conservatives have a lot of money, and that they have used tactics, that they're guilty of electoral fraud over and over, and that people don't know about it. That he's, we're on
program. I
Democracy
had
Watch.
full program 1 hour about that.
That's great.
Oh
And
yes.
Democracy Watch in Geneva confirmed with our Speaker of the House finding our Prime Minister in contempt of Parliament.
Now, Hugh, how are we doing?
We got 5.
Okay. No, I had a full hour program. I brought an expert to explain all from 2006 on, from in and out to the robocalls to the other fraud.
Well, it's asking the Senate to defeat, or whipping the Senate to defeat a bill that was passed in the House.
These are ongoing.
Is
These are
against the
ongoing.
Constitution.
But for a second, don't forget, liberals did that too.
No, this is my point.
Yeah.
It's a bit like this. The Liberals and the PCs
Do you
before
remember
had to make sure the
1995?
soil was rich.
Yeah.
The soil had to be rich for Mr. Harper's Conservatives to take root.
Yeah, 1995. Now for the last, that is a camera for you. If you have, if you want to talk to your constituents, you have a minute or so. Just talk to them with your heart. So it become like a end of the program before we close the program, so they know that you are talking to them too instead of me.
Thank you, Bauman. Well, you've heard me chatting with Bauman, who's a very kind man.
Thank you.
Yes, I can tell. And
He's
because he's so interested in Canada and motivated to make a difference. I would hope that you would take a page from his book. Every Canadian needs to stand up. This is the time to do it. If you can't, then make phone calls. Write to your MPs. If you think something is not right, we need to do something about it. And I would like to represent you in Parliament. I'm talking to my constituents or my neighbours in King Vaughan. And if you elected a Green Party candidate, you would be guaranteed to have someone who will represent you. It will be genuine representation. I would be more or less a loose fish, as John and MacDonald called us then. People who were there to freely speak on behalf of and vote for the best interests of the constituents, or how you want me to vote. That's of primary importance to me. The other thing I would like to say is that I'm aware of so many issues in our riding. I'm particularly concerned about our lack of infrastructure, and I don't mean just the fact that there are no local jobs or affordable houses for our young people to leave home and work and live in the area. That's important, very important. But it's also a matter of social infrastructure. We have a lot of young people now I consider at-risk youth. I've met some people who are trying very hard to keep their chins up. It is tough. There's no place for them to gather. There's no services for them. Mental health issues aside, they just don't have even an employment center. It is very difficult. We seem to have lost a bit of fabric of the community in Maple. It was developed and is no longer really a town center. We need to try to bring that back. I wanted to be able to afford renting an old building, and in Maple, because it has public transit and is close to almost everyone in King Township has to drive through Maple or near it. We wanted to rent a building, not just for a constituency office. If we don't win the election, we're not going to roll up and pack up and leave. We're going to stay and try to serve the community. So we were hoping to have it like a drop-in center, a place where seniors could come and have some soup. There's just such a need for knitting this community together. And I hope that in the next 4 years, if you do not elect me, I am still going to find you and get to know you and find out what your problems are, because I'm going to be serving the community. That's what I committed to do when I joined the Green Party to run in this election. So hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thank you, and I hope they hear you too. We, as I said, we don't have that. We cannot promise that we have too many of the audience, but even 1 vote or 2 vote or 3 vote here and there counts, and they can spread the words as well.
May I give them my phone number?
Of course.
416-825-4275. That's my personal cell phone.
And it will be at the end of the program rolled down, so they will look at it.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you for accepting my invitation
That was a pleasure.
and committed to that, to your promise. And even though it is a long way from Maple and King City to come down at the middle of the afternoon, again,
You know where we're going now? We're going to Newmarket Library. Fair Vote Canada is having a session, information session. My husband and I are interested to attend in the discussion of proportional representation, which is, of course, a Green Party.
Yeah, I am familiar with
Policy.
that organization. Yeah, good for you.
I don't particularly, I'm not sure myself, and you know why? Because it relies on parties. And I
Well,
don't-
again, you never know
It's how you
who
do
is
it, right?
who is behind that. Well, we are reaching to the end of the program. Thank you for being with us this afternoon of the September 15, 2015. We are almost 5 weeks away from the election day, 19th of the October. Please be aware that I sent multiple invitation to more than 200 candidates within 56 ridings in GTA and suburb who can be here within 1 hour or so, and many of them from even mainstream parties, they refuse to answer. Some of them declined. Some of them were gracious enough to accept my invitation, like Anne did today. Please remember, as I always say, to take part in electoral process, which I believe it is the only thing left of democracy as we know it. Become a volunteer, help a candidate, donate, vote for sure, and even better, you yourself become a candidate. Thank you and good night.
Hear, hear.